thank you, Linda, for taking the time to talk to us ahead of Mental Health Awareness Week and to share some of your thoughts and insights. I've got a few questions I thought we'd run through, and firstly, really interested to get your perspective on some of the positive changes that I'm sure you've observed in the mental health sector over the past few years, and some of your thoughts on those.
No, well, thank you for having me, Linda. Very confusing for everyone. We're both called Linda. I think in terms of the positives, probably the most obvious one that everyone sees is the fact we seem to be talking more about mental health. In our charity at Together for Mental Wellbeing, we talk about mental distress because it kind of encapsulates everything we do. So I think pretty much on a daily basis now you see in the news and in other places, some high profile people talking about their mental health. And I think that really resonates. It definitely resonates with the people that we support in our services. And it makes people much more confident that the kind of experiences that they have are being shared. It's not something anymore that, is so stigmatizing that people don't talk about it. And I think the other positive things that we're seeing is that people are able to access support in a much more real way for them. So actually, if you go to your GP, you should be able to get support around your mental health that isn't just focused on getting medication. They can refer you to different places for things that might make a difference for you. So a much more kind of personalized approach rather than kind of a one size fits all. I mean, for me, I'm a forensic psychologist by background, which is a bit of a niche area, but I think what I've seen and what I've been very passionate about for many years working in the mental health sector is how we support people who find themselves in the criminal justice system around their mental health, because very often these are not people who pose a risk to society. They are people who've got themselves in a bit of a trouble as a result of their mental distress. And we now have services that are much better funded for them, where we can help assess what their needs are, and we can refer them to hopefully get them out of that kind of cycle of reoffending and really make a difference for people's lives who just find themselves in really unfortunate and sad circumstances. So I think there's been a lot of positives changes actually, and I think probably one of the big ones is that we're just talking about it a lot more.
And helpfully us talking about it again today and sharing this will support it further. And then what are some of the changes that I'm sure still need to take place in order to help people with mental distress or to have good mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think even though I've talked about the fact that we are talking about mental health much more, I think a lot of our services aren't built on people's experiences. So I think, we are the experts in our own health, really. So when we go along to our GP, it should be, the GP is asking about what do we think we want and need, and how might we go about getting that. And I think there's still a lot of work that we need to be doing, particularly people, agencies and government agencies that fund the services that you and I might access is actually built around what we need and want. So for example, I'm going through the menopause, which impacts me physically and it impacts me mentally, but I can't say necessarily that I've received a service where both my physical health and my mental health has kind of been looked at together. And no one's asked me, how would you like your mental health supported because you are going through the menopause? So I think there's still a lot more we can do in terms of just listening to what people want and need. I think the other thing that really concerns me is around our children and young people. We've seen them being really badly impacted by the pandemic, being out of school, not being with their friends and peers, and in the mental health sector, we've seen a big rise and demand for children and young people's services. And I think there's a couple of things in that, we need to support parents better and schools better at how we can really look after our children and young people. And with that, I'm afraid, comes a bit more money that we need to be putting in and investing in our children and young people. So there's an awful lot of good stuff that's happening, but there's an awful lot more that we need to do to make sure that we don't have a generation of children and young people who've been adversely affected by something that was outside of all of our control, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough one, that. I'm a school governor at my son's school, and yeah, we were having a session the other day, and the anxiety rates from all sorts of children across the school are just through the roof. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. I suppose moving on to think a little bit more in your role as chief executive, you know, it's been incredibly tough, more so now than ever, for organisations and leaders to look after the mental health and well-being of their staff. Any insight into how together have been tackling that?
Yeah, well, we have asked our staff, what is it that matters to you around your health and well-being? And it's been really interesting what people's responses have been, actually. So as part of our kind of equality, diversity and inclusion work, we asked staff, how would you feel more included at work? How would you bring your whole self to work? Because, you know, we don't, you know, when I was training as a psychologist, you know, you were taught, you know, you leave your personal life at the door, you don't bring it with you, and you're just there as a kind of professional. Well, that's really a myth, because, you know, I can't divorce myself from who I am anywhere else in my life. So what we're trying to encourage our staff to do is to bring them whole selves to work. And how do we support people to make sure we properly look after them? Because it's impactful, the work that we do. We work with people who experience very significant mental distress, and they experience a whole range of other experiences as a result of very traumatic life events, and our staff have to listen and work with that. So for example, having just talked about the menopause, a group of women came together and said, we want to set up a perimenopause, a menopausal group. And they're helping us write a policy around that, and we now have a new policy. But they also meet in a kind of peer support way. So for the first half an hour of their meeting, they share their experiences about what does it feel like, you know. And we know in the health and social care sector, 70-80% of the sector is women. And then we looked at our own organisation, and 40% are of an age that could be experiencing the menopause. So we've gone out and we've asked staff. So we've given staff agency about, tell us what matters, and then we will do something about that. Something else that we've been rolling out is what it sounds a bit technical. It's called reflective practice. So that is about bringing staff together and being able to talk about the impact of the work that the work has on them. And that can be facilitated by someone, or it can be peer-led. And that allows people the space, and a safe space, it doesn't have managers in it, to be able to be really honest about, what does it feel like in my role? What does it feel like when I'm listening to the personal stories of the people that we work alongside in our services? And what do I take home with me that actually could be quite harmful to me? What do I actually do need more support over? So, the big thing I think for looking after your workforce is asking them, what do you need from us? And then being really honest about what you can provide, and where maybe you also need to go externally to get some support. So we have an employee assistant program, which we've just changed because we wanted something that really could respond much more flexibly to the diversity of our workforce. So I think it's about giving your staff and volunteers a whole range of different support tools and places that they can go.
Such good advice. Thank you, Linda. And what do you do? I'm sure there's things, right? What have you found, if anything, really helped support your mental health?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think if I think about when the pandemic started and we were all suddenly thrown into kind of working from home, and your structures were different, and as a CEO of a mental health social care provider, it was like, wow, this is unprecedented. This is going to get really tricky. I started doing a bit of mindfulness practice. I didn't have a clue what mindfulness meant, and I probably am not a great example of how to do it. But actually doing a bit of mindfulness, having a bit of space, clearing my head of everything meant that things became and felt less overwhelming. But you don't have to kind of, go and get a really complicated app. On a good day, I set the timer on my watch and I do 5 minutes of deep breathing before my mind goes away into work. So, there's really simple things that you can do. I think the other thing that I really have to do every day is to go out for a walk with my dogs. I have 2 energetic Greek rescue dogs who like to chase things, which means I have to be vigilant, but I need to be outdoors. So, I need to start my day with that kind of just being quiet, being calm. And then I just feel really set up for it. And I think we're all probably not so good at self-care. And we have to be reminded. And sometimes that reminder comes from knowing that we haven't been doing what we need to do to look after ourselves. So, and the other big thing is sleep. I'm a hopeless sleeper. So I work very hard, strangely enough, to make sure that I'm not on my screen at 9 o'clock at night, and then because that doesn't help me at all. So we know sleep is incredibly restorative. So I do all that I can to try and sleep better. Not always very successfully, she said, with bags under her eyes. But anyway.
Oh, there's some really helpful hints there, and many that I know people will relate to and also want to try as hard as they can to achieve. Thank you so much again, Linda. That's been fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.